On this episode, we talk to Drew Kamthong, COO of MAQE Digital Consultancy, on the realities of running a medium-sized business in Bangkok.
So if you're a manager, an entrepreneur, or just curious about the business landscape in Bangkok, you'll learn a lot on this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who followed his friend to Thailand in 2001, and after 17 years, I've decided that my favorite Thai character to write is Cha Ching. True story.
Whoa, Cha Ching, interesting character. Yeah. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 17 years ago, fell in love with elephants roaming the streets of Bangkok, and never left.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore, do you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we've never talked about that. But when I got here, there were still elephants walking the streets. Obviously, they weren't wild elephants. They were being led around, and people could you'd buy peanuts for the elephants and things like that. And actually, I initially thought it was the coolest thing ever. But after being here a couple weeks, I realized that obviously the elephants were being exploited.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was first, starstruck, and especially when friends and family came to visit and you see an elephant walking down Silom, it's pretty cool to go, oh yeah, that happens all the time. Ha ha ha. And I really liked it when I first saw it because, it just sort of helps to drive home how exotic Bangkok is. But then you learn a bit more and you look a bit more into it and you realize these poor animals are being basically tortured. And you're like, yeah, that's not good. So I'm glad it's gone now.
Yeah, I'm glad. I believe even when I got here in 2000, I think it was already illegal. But like many things in Thailand, it was not enforced. So there were plenty of elephants roaming around. But luckily, I don't know when it disappeared. I feel like by maybe 2005, 2006, I feel like they were kind of on their way out, which is a good thing. The
only thing it made me think of was when I first came to Thailand, I did a jungle trek. And how just completely out of my element my fat ass was in the middle of Thailand's rainforests, as how these elephants must have felt in Bangkok. Just get me back to where I feel comfortable. This is horrible. All right, before we get into things, we want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, a dude by the name of Seni Chai Seni, who supports us at the show shoutout level. Now stick around after we talk to MAQE co-founder and COO Drew Kamthong about running a mid-sized design and technology company in Bangkok, to hear why I think Seni might be either a dark magic practitioner or a badass snowboarder.
Whoa. All I got to say is Seni Chai Seni is a pretty freaking cool name.
Cool name.
You can learn more about becoming a patron on our website. And of course, one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about all kinds of stuff. We just finished recording this week's bonus show. We chatted about a couple recent stories about the Thai economy, about how Bangkok is now one of the world's 100 most expensive cities, and Thailand is now considered the most unequal country in the world. So if you're interested in Thai economics or the Thai economy, check out our bonus show, become a patron and check out our bonus show. And we also had a segment of Thai News of the Weird where we talked about an incident involving an Aussie tourist and a Thai dancer. And for the details of that, you're going to have to listen to the bonus show.
That's a hell of a story. All right, but before we jump into the main show, we have to mention this. Now, on last week's show, Ed, you said you wanted to create a word that describes the feeling of putting off something important because you want to spend the right amount of time on it, but actually just end up putting it off indefinitely, so the thing you want to do actually never ends up getting done.
That's right. It's kind of like your good intentions become your downfall.
Right, exactly. Well, one of our listeners on Twitter, he wrote a quick message to us. His name is Michael Osofsky, and he said, Ed, the neologism you're looking for may actually be a paleologism, which means an existing word, because I think you're describing a type of procrastination, namely perfectionism or analysis paralysis. How about perfection paralysis? What do you think of that?
Oh, interesting. Analysis paralysis. I like that. It's technically not one word, but it appears to be a pre-existing concept.
Yeah. We were talking about how, as an expat, you want to keep in touch with like the important people in your life back home, but you want to make sure to give it the right amount, an appropriate amount of attention. But you just never have time to do that, so you end up losing touch with your friends back home because you're just too busy to write them.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Michael. I like that analysis paralysis. I'm going to remember that.
Analysis paralysis. That sounds like a badass punk band, too. You can do that. And lastly, a quick programming note. Due to some insane schedules and a few vacations coming up, Ed and I are taking next week off. We're just not able to get to it. So we will be back to our regular schedule in the first week of January. So next week, you're going to have... your ears are going to get a rest from our voices, but we'll be back in the swing of things first week of 2019.
True that.
All right. Well, in this episode, we're continuing our look at what it's like running small, medium, and large-sized businesses in Bangkok. And we first covered small businesses with Matthew Fisher, who runs a few successful restaurants, Fatty's and the Fat Tap, both great places. And on this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the issues that come with running a medium-sized company. We've actually gotten a fair amount of messages from people who want to learn more about running a business in Bangkok. Most of them have been specifically asking about the tech-related industries. So I sat down with Drew Kamthong, co-founder and COO of MAQE, that's MAQE, an award-winning digital consultancy that specializes in branding, e-commerce, business intelligence, and digital strategies for companies of all sizes. They started small, but have grown steadily over the years and now have around 40 employees in a very cool office in the Planchit area. So Drew and his team have worked really hard to implement modern management ideas and techniques into MAQE's operating philosophy, which isn't always easy in a culture where a lot of businesses and a lot of staff are kind of used to an if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. And Drew also goes into detail on what it's like to apply for a BOI classification that many companies want to have here in Thailand. So to find out more, here's my interview with Drew Kamthong. All right, well, we're very happy to have an old friend of mine, Drew Kamthong, on the show to talk about what it's like running a medium-sized company in Thailand and all the ups and downs that come with it. So, Drew, welcome to the Bangkok podcast. And as we get started, can you sort of give us a little bit of background on your company, how it started, where the idea came from, and what it looks like today?
So MAQE is a digital consultancy. We didn't start out that way. But in late 2011, we started the company. Me and Andreas, my business partner, started the company because I was running another company before that with a friend from the UK, and basically I was getting pressure. He was getting pressure as well from his wife. Say, hey, why don't you do your own thing? Because I was working for a friend at the time. I thought, okay, well, maybe we can do our own thing. And right a couple of wrongs that we felt was going on in the way that we were practicing our industry. So as a digital consultancy, you might ask what that means. And that's basically sort of web development agency. At least at the time, that's what we were. And we were started to build small content managed websites for clients that were in the region, and also mainly from Sweden, actually, because when we first started the company, Andreas had written a business plan that he sort of sent to his friends back in Stockholm, who happened to be an incubator for startups. And so they read the brief and immediately got interested because they thought, oh, wow, they could outsource this work really cheap to Thailand. And they flew over a couple of weeks later and put some money down with us, and off we went. So that's how things got started. Today, we are a little over 40 people now, and now moving into an area of what we call digital consultancy, which is we're trying to move away from traditional web agency work, where we're actually not just building what clients are asking us to build, but we're actually offering consultancy services about how you could approach a problem. So if you don't really know, you have a basic concept about what you'd like, but you don't really know how to flesh out the idea, we've got consultancy service to help you sort of flesh out the idea a bit further using design thinking techniques and workshops before you actually jump down the route of building a web application or a mobile app. And that'll save you a whole world of pain and finding out and spending millions of baht just to find out that, it doesn't kind of work.
Well, we're sitting here in your office. It's a very open, bright, looks like a happy area in the Planchet area. And the last time I was here was a few years ago, and it was significantly smaller than it is now. I'd say there was probably about maybe 10 or 12 people working there when I was last here. And you seem to have done quite well and grown a little bit, which is great. So as you have grown, what strategies have you been focusing on, and what have you been chasing, and what have you been avoiding to help you stay away from some of the pitfalls and problems that this industry can sometimes throw in your direction? Well,
that's a loaded question. A lot has happened in the last 6 years. So we're coming up to 7 years now in the business. When we first started out, I guess we were just rolling with the punches, thinking that we could build websites better. And we started to improve the working processes, because I think back in about late 2012, there were a lot of agencies back then as well. And we felt that we could do significantly better than the rest by how we operated, because there's a lot of companies that would wing the development. They would just sort of build it very quickly. And then they would make mistakes. They would burn the customer, and the burnt customer would end up with us. And what we would do is that we would have a fleshed out sort of idea of how we would approach a problem. So we instituted a process of how we would build. We would control the information as best we could. We didn't do it that well at the beginning. It was a learning process, but we figured that we should document a bit more carefully. We would use online tools to help us track the project, track the budget, communicate that back to the client. And we had a very sort of an open approach, or transparent approach to working with our clients, which we felt, if it was us, would be very important.
Oh, yeah.
So we tried everything that we could to make sure that everything was transparent, so that the client knew what they were getting into. Any problems that were surfacing, we would flag as early as possible. And then eventually, I think we started to upgrade our working processes to use a system called Agile. And we got an opportunity to try that with one of our Swedish clients, who allowed us to try something called Scrum, which is an agile project management methodology that's quite systematic if you read into it. But essentially, there's a traditional way of working where which is called waterfall, which you plan everything in the beginning, you design, and then you just build right to the end. And it takes 3 months, 6 months, whatever. But you usually find out that you're going the wrong way almost at the end. So that doesn't really work. So we figured that given the clients change their minds frequently, Agile, which is a much more flexible way of working, allows us to deal with these changes a lot more easily and more effectively. So that helped us, one, communicate faster to the client and let them see the changes quicker, so that if they did want to change direction, they could. They felt that, then the client felt like that we should still do fixed cost projects. And so we said, okay, well, fair enough. But if you want to change something within the fixed budget and you want to change constantly, then you can change it for something of equal size. That's fair. That way, we don't get shafted by the elevated cost, and they keep their costs the same as well as the time frame. They just have to sacrifice something for an equal size. So swap something in, swap something out. Fair is fair. And if they want to keep everything, then you have to pay more, take more time, right? That's fair. So we introduced that.
Oh, right, okay.
Apart from introducing Agile, we were hiring as well, trying to improve the people that we were getting. We employed a system that helped people train up internally. So we would encourage knowledge sharing a lot. I used to hear these horror stories where these senior guys would hold on to all their information, that all that knowledge, and not share it, and then all that technical debt would be just stuck with that guy. So when he left, everybody was screwed. So I didn't want that. I wanted to make sure that people felt they had somewhere to go and they could grow further. So I think developing our people was one of the most important things that we could do at the same time, as well as manage our clients. So we did a lot of things at the same time, not all of it well. I think, again, it was a learning process. And we split the teams up into what we call now guilds and crews. And the whole idea of guilds and crews was, with guilds, it would be like, it's not quite like a department, but basically a group of people that had a common objective. So we have a back-end guild, front-end guild, design guild, and these guilds would be a group of people focused on that particular subject area. We never limited people from joining other guilds. It wasn't really the point, although it's sort of congregated that way right now. So everyone in the guilds are actually all designers or all front-end developers or for all back-end. But we always encourage people to say, you can join in and go and observe a guild meeting, and they would discuss topics within that expertise. With crews, we wanted to encourage people to help develop the company in areas that we didn't have time for. Because we felt like if all the decisions came to me and Andreas, nothing would get done. We would just be the bottleneck in the company.
Oh, yeah.
And so we wanted people to get engaged and help run the company. So we have, at the time, we had a method crew, which was about processes. How could we work better? What could we take away? We had a happy crew, which was people that would like to entertain the staff. They would sort out all the staff holiday, the end of year parties and holidays, breaks. They would do these kind of, small gifts of appreciation. If someone did something really well, I could tell the happy crew to go, hey, can you sort out a gift for this guy who's done a really good job? And they'll go away, give him a budget. They would go sort it out and find something fun. I don't have to think about it. That kind of thing. So we had a crew for that. We have a comms crew we don't have a dedicated marketing department, so everybody who would like to express their thoughts on a blog post or Facebook or whatever is sort of free in this kind of group to communicate externally about what's going on in the company, and we sort of freely encourage that, whatever it is, good or bad, just communicate it, be an open free and let it be a window apart from, into the company apart from the website.
Oh, right, okay.
I'd hop back to development of people again, because that was really important, and it still is to this day. And I think a lot of companies neglect their people in some sense, or at least they don't pay as much attention to it as they could do. So we ended up hiring a human capital consultant who was a friend of one of our staff. And he came in and gave us a lot of ideas, because we already had these big ideas about how could we compensate our staff better, how could we structure it so it's fair. So at the time we had implemented a salary ladder that encouraged fair pay, because I didn't like the idea of one senior developer who was not so good at their job earning 4 times as pay as someone who's lower grade or newer into the company. But just couldn't perform as well, and the newer guy was being paid much less. I didn't think that was fair. So I was trying to encourage the team to move away from pay related to time on clock, so how much experience they had. So it didn't matter if they had 8 years, 12 years experience. If they couldn't do the same job as someone of a certain level of skill, I wouldn't pay them that much. I don't care how old they are. So we tried to remove that seniority out of, the age seniority out, which is a bit tough because in Thai culture, age is a big deal. So people that are older automatically have that respect, and it's almost unconditional, which is insane. But I understand it, given that I'm Thai as well. But it doesn't work. It's not a good system to use, because then people can misuse that experience.
Yeah, that must present some uniquely Thai complications. I want to come back to staff in a minute, but first of all, you were talking about things like Agile, Scrum, full transparency, knowledge sharing, and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these seem like primarily sort of Western-influenced business strategies. And from my experience, which is granted not that awesome in this particular business, it doesn't seem like a lot of Thai companies would use similar strategies. Has that been your experience? Like, is offering a workplace that deals with these kind of things sort of seen as unique or more westernized than your average Thai office?
Actually, you'd be surprised. A lot more people, and including companies, especially corporates, because we've dealt with SMEs and now enterprise now. They're definitely catching on to these working processes. There are companies that haven't employed it yet and that want to, but there's a lot of staff that are very keen on it and haven't yet had the chance to experience Agile. I think people are becoming more aware that waterfall doesn't really work so well. It's a very archaic way of operating. And I guess it really depends on the project. So I think in enterprise circles, waterfall is still prevalent. It's still there, and I think out of necessity it has to be, because everything has to be planned carefully. There's regulations to work with, and so they have to lock everything down. That's not to say that it can't work in an agile fashion. I think they just don't know how yet on a large scale. So that's a challenge for an organization to change. And so the ones that are interested end up jumping ship to go and find that experience. And I find that now we're working with a couple of large corporates that are trying out, and they're all spewing, we must be agile, we must be flexible, but they're spewing it out like it's like this holy grail of solution to make your company better, which it's got to be done with a little more thought than that. But who am I to say? I don't run a 1,000-person company, but I hear a lot of executives spewing out, yes, we must be agile, and I'm like, well, sure, but we should think about what we're going to do before we start going agile first. They're just running into it just so that they can answer a KPI. So it's certainly an area that people are interested in.
That's encouraging, because my experience with Thai companies has not been encouraging. And I've always said that there's no way I would ever go back and work for a Thai-managed company again. But maybe that's some more insight that I've been away from it long enough that now things have changed a little bit. What you said sort of reminds me what you hear about the government saying, Thailand 4.0, like as a magical bullet, like you apply that label and suddenly all these problems will erase themselves. Meanwhile, they're saying Thailand 4.0, but sit there and shut up. Don't question my authority, and do what I tell you to do. Which doesn't really help. Well, let's talk about staffing a little bit. Now, what's the ratio of Thai and foreign staff here at MAQE?
Right now, 40 plus people. I think off the top of my head, we have about 4 or 5 foreigners. So it's not on purpose. I don't mind the foreigner ratio because we're BOI endorsed as well. That helps a great deal, and it helps me with the choices that we have in terms of who we need to hire. So I'm not limited to just only Thai staff. We can bring in people from outside, because in my industry, or in this particular industry, finding IT talent is actually very tough right now. It's very, very competitive right now. There's massive demand right now. Like every partner agency I'm talking to are like, they're all fully booked right now, and they're all hurting for people, and there's high demand.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the unique challenges there that you see hiring Thai staff, as well as some of the unique challenges you see hiring foreign staff?
With Thai staff, it's more about it's a combination of things actually. So when we hire based on 2 factors. One is skill set, and the other is fit, and potential. Actually, I guess there's 3. Let me correct myself there. But I think potential is baked into the first, which is skills. So for programmers that we hire, we have employed a number of tests. So one is a homework test, just to filter out candidates, because a lot of candidates tend to apply, think they can code, and actually can't. And it's not because they technically cannot code at all, it's because the quality of the code is quite poor. The other trait is the potential, right? So people that we hire, we don't necessarily expect them to have skills out the door, but we do want that potential so that we can grow them. And that potential is usually signified by their own curiosity. So how much time have they invested themselves into researching an area of interest? So if they're a programmer, what language have they tried? What have they done in their spare time? If they're a designer, what have they done in their past? How have they been influenced by other designs? What do they do to make their work better? How do they think? How do they problem solve? It's that thinking process that is lacking out here. I'll go down a line here that might be a bit contentious, but there's this background where the story where a lot of teaching out here in Thailand is rote, and so that creative critical thinking skill is missing. Not to say that it's not all there, it's not absent completely, but the ones that tend to have it have either lived outside the country for a couple of years, or either worked or lived outside or studied outside of Thailand, and they come back with a much more centered level of thinking. They actually think a little bit outside their comfort zone.
Oh, interesting.
And that's quite hard to find. I hired this guy just literally a few months ago, and he was studying and working in the States for a couple of years, and he's come back, and he's 29. He's coming in as a sort of intermediate developer, which you'd expect that in your late 20s to be close to a senior. But he's so smart and really fast and very intrigued. So maybe he spent a couple of years not quite finding himself, but his potential is so high and it's so valuable. I would hire these people in a heartbeat. Like, you don't have to have skills out the door. If they've got that kind of potential, that's good enough.
Oh, that's really cool.
So that's partly what's missing. And then also team fit. Team fit, the last factor for both foreigners and Thais, is very important. So I've seen companies that hire only raw skill, and boy, when you see the atmosphere in their company, it is so odd. It's when they talk, I thought they were arguing. It's just not very friendly because they don't seem to get on very well. And so culture is built upon people that have a similar sort of mindset and belief, right? So you want to hire people. So I use the teams to hire each other in terms of team fit. So when it comes down to skills, I let them do that. When it comes down to team fit, I just put a candidate in a room with a bunch of staff, and then they just talk shit, just talk smack, anything that isn't work related, just to get to know them a bit better and see if they could be in the same room 8 hours a day, and get along, and that's important. With foreigners here, I think it's the same challenges. I think it's about skill and team fit again. Team fit might be a bit more of an issue, and I've noticed this recently with previous foreign staff, is team fit is a bit tougher, especially if it's a foreigner that hasn't lived in Thailand before. And Thais can be a bit, I don't know how to say it, but it can be a little bit mean to the foreigners in that when they socially interact, they tend to segregate themselves amongst themselves. They don't always tend to approach the foreigners to come and talk. They just like to talk in Thai. So some of the foreign staff can feel a bit isolated. And it's not on purpose, but I think it's about comfort zone.
Well, I don't think that's a particularly Thai thing in general. I mean, in my office too, I usually have lunch with the foreigners, even though I get on well with my Thai team. It's just easier that way. It's the same reason I don't have a conversation in Thai with a taxi driver on the way home. It's just much less friction for me to sit in the back and be in my little comfort zone. Well, that's interesting. I like the idea of sort of throwing people into a room, into the lion's den, so to speak, and just letting them hash it out. That's really cool. So as we're getting towards the end of the interview here, as you operate in Thailand, sort of in terms of the red tape and the paperwork and the hoops you have to jump through here, what sort of bothers you the most, and what's the biggest thing that you need to deal with in terms of sort of operating a 21st century business in wannabe 21st century Thailand?
The irony is that the amount of paperwork I have to fill out for a digital company, I think that's what bugs me the most, is that everything that I have to sign has to have a copy of either the company affidavit, my ID card, and I have to sign multiple copies. So, like, if I'm doing something with the bank and they know me, I've already signed these damn papers. And every time, okay, here's one. Every time I send an international money transfer, I have to sign a copy of the company affidavit with my ID card. And I do this every month. And that's just, that's like 4 or 5 sheets of paper that they already have every month. I think about how many trees are being cut down for this stuff.
There are some positive signs, inspiring signs, and we've talked about this on the show before about how I have a digital work permit now, which is on a little app in my phone. So I'm sure it took years and years to get there, but it's there. So one can hold out hope. And finally, just as we're wrapping up, you might have more insight into this than I do, but we've had a couple of our listeners in the past ask about a BOI company. The company I work for is a BOI company, and you mentioned a BOI earlier. Can you sort of just give a quick little rundown on what that is, what is required, and if it's available to like your average person who wants to start up their company in Thailand?
Well, I'll only know this for my specific company because the BOI offers a lot of incentives for a range of companies, mostly in I think manufacturing. So software they're definitely pushing for. But what I understand is recently there's several categories of digital or software companies that can get endorsed. So for us, for MAQE, we were endorsed under the software development category about 7 years ago. So what it provides us is one, the rights to hire as many foreigners as we want, subject to certain conditions. And the second thing is you avoid paying corporation tax for whatever the duration of your endorsement is. So you can be endorsed for 1 year or up to a maximum of 8 years. It can be either a fully Thai or fully foreign company. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that you can fulfill their requirements for that specific category that you're applying for. So in the case of software, they wanted to make sure that when we were doing the work, we were exporting the work. That's one condition of our endorsement at that time. The rules will change, so you have to check with the BOI website and new lawyers. Oh, by export with software, it means that you can't do software that's like a SaaS-based, software as a service, anything like subscription. You sort of have to build it and then let it go and give it to your client. That's the condition that we were under. So that's one limit. What else? I think we had to employ project management techniques. So we had to do design, functional specification documents. We had to do digital content. That was part of the remit, and we had to describe how we would do that to a BOI officer. You have to do a business plan. Essentially, you have to write a business plan in these forms. You have to describe how much money you will spend on software, how much on people across 3 years. So you have to put that in, and then you get grilled by a BOI officer for about an hour. And our chat was 2 hours, strangely enough. So we had this first officer come up to us, start asking us these questions, and she looked mean as hell. So me and Andreas were getting really, really wary. And then they swapped her out with somebody else who was actually quite good looking, actually. And then she saw Andreas, because Andreas is Swedish and he's really good looking for a guy, right? And I thought, yes, that's it. I don't have to do anything now. The looks just did it. And she just grilled us for 2 hours, smiling all the way, really happy, mostly looking at him, which is great. Because she looked at me, I don't think we would get it. And they were just really interested in what we were doing. They haven't touched a lot on digital, so it was really interesting that they didn't really understand a lot of the concepts that we wanted to employ in our business. So the fact that we wanted to do digital projects, we wanted to plan it really well, we wanted to train people. That's part of it as well. You have to put it in a training plan, and just lightly. It's nothing really in depth. Just a top level idea of who you would train, what skills they would gain, because the conditions of hiring a foreigner is that you have to put a training plan together. So whenever you make a submission for a work permit, you have to also submit afterwards, I think, or what knowledge transfer has happened and over when. In the end, you just template it and submit it the same thing over. They just need it for the paper. They don't really care. But they do go over your application with a fine-tooth comb. So even though you submit, I think now it's all done online now, this one gateway. It's changed recently. So now you can submit everything online.
Oh, interesting.
When you do your work permits.
All right, final question. It's a bit of a broad one. If you were doing it all again, opening up a business in Thailand, expecting it to grow, what would you do differently?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Now that I know better, I think if we had a better idea on a couple of things. So one is the business proposition and the business brand. If I find that right now, we were quite lucky that all our work is inbound. We actually don't have any marketing at all. And so a lot of the work that we get is word of mouth. If we had better company branding, meaning we clearly messaged our proposition of what we do, both for clients and for potential hiring people that we want to work for us, it would probably make hiring a lot easier, and businesses understand externally what we do, because it's a bit ambiguous. So I think that messaging is important. I've seen Other companies put up a website very quickly, and it's a couple of pages, but it doesn't really say clearly what they do. It's a bit ambiguous. And I think that message is very important, because when I was hiring at the beginning, we made everybody was doing, here's your responsibilities and here's what you would do and your benefits, and it was a very template job advert. And we thought we didn't want to have a job advert that looked like everybody else's, so we wrote it differently and said, no matter what your age, sex, or gender, we want you to be happy at your job.
Oh, right, okay.
And interestingly enough, that struck a chord with many applicants, and they kept writing in, applying, saying, wow, I've never seen anybody write a job advert that way. They were really taken by the message. So that's an important, that makes hiring much, much, much more easier. And the second thing I think would be having a clear structure about how we would compensate people and the criteria, because I think people, at the end of the day, the biggest and the toughest part of business is people. It isn't really building the websites. That's actually quite easy. It's people, and both from the client side and both from our staffing point of view, because staff at the end of the day need a lot of TLC, clients just need a lot of TLC at the end of the day. And so knowing how to handle that better, I think, would make things much easier and well equipped to deal with the issues in the future, because we got burnt a couple of times making poor choices.
All right, man. Well, thanks for that insight. That was really interesting, and it sounds like you got a good handle on things in a growing, dynamic industry, which is fantastic. And thanks for coming on. And the next time I come back to your office, I probably expect to be visiting the MAQE building instead of just a single floor.
I wish.
So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Wow, that was really interesting. You know, I having worked in mixed office places for most of my time in Thailand, I appreciate his insights because almost by definition, if you're an expat in Thailand, you're probably working in an office where Thai people work. I suppose it's possible you could be in an office with all expats, but I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
And so trying to find a way to keep everybody happy, that's certainly a problem that any manager or business owner is going to have to figure out.
Yeah. Someone like Drew, I mean, he has to be especially sensitive to everyone, right? I mean, you've got to lead by example. You've got to lead all people from all over the world. So it's often it's kind of a delicate balancing act to make sure that everyone in the office has what they need, is being respected, and is also being driven to success. But I know I've known Drew for a number of years, and the CEO of the company, also Andreas, and they think a lot. They put a lot of thought into making sure that things are done the right way, and in a very modern company in a city like Bangkok is, I don't know. I always say there's a lot of Thai companies that just they have so much potential, but they're not managed right. But you know, this company MAQE, they put a lot of work into making sure that they do what they say and they do it well. So good on them. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or leave, where one of us surprises the other guy with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or hate so much that it makes us want to leave forever. And this week, man, it's over to you.
All right, Greg. What do you think about the jingle, the music that plays when the Thai ice cream truck goes by?
Oh, dude, you touched a nerve. I hate that. I hate it. I loathe it. I might even leave because of it. And that's so funny. It's such a specific random thing, but it means so much to me. Well, because I'll tell you what. Can you sing it?
No, I can't. I mean, maybe we could.
You know what? I'm gonna let's play a little clip of it right now. This is what Ed's talking about. Oh man. And I'll tell you why I hate it too, because my first year in Bangkok I lived in Chiang Mai, and it was a complete waste of time. I was a total douche. I didn't do anything. I didn't eat any Thai food. I didn't learn any Thai language. I didn't make any Thai friends. I was just a complete waste of time. But at the time I thought I was having fun. And I would sleep in as long as I could every day, because I would stay up late watching TV. And every morning at 9:30, this stupid Swenson's little motorcycle guy would drive by our building. Do 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 do, and it would wake me up every single morning, 7 days a week, and I came to hate it.
Wow, your loathe.
So a definite loathe from me.
Interesting. Yeah, your loathe is different than mine. Like mine is more conceptual because it makes no sense. It makes no sense, but like when I hear it and I know it's ice cream, it just doesn't sound right. It's like the American jingle has just been burned into my my consciousness, and I can't handle it. It's like it's not right. Like there should be like a universal language for ice cream.
It's like someone speaking English and then the words are all different. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
That's right.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, definite loathe from me.
All right, I'm going to have to go loathe too, although my loathe is less intense than yours, but I'm going to have to go loathe. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Seni Chaiseni for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Seni?
Well, I asked Seni to send me some info about himself so I could get an idea of what kind of person he is, but he never got back to me. So that means I had to do some of my famous internet sleuthing. And what I found makes Seni one of our most metal patrons for sure. So I'm not sure if you know, Ed, but at the beginning of the show we talked about what a cool name Seni Chaiseni is. But I don't know if you know this, but if you put someone's name into the Internet Anagram server, you can get clues to their personality from the phrases hidden inside their names.
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, I did this with Seni's name, and the first one that came up, check this out, was his insane ice.
Oh.
So I think that Seni might actually be a closet snowboard shredder, you know?
Insane ice. Insane ice. What else could he be?
His insane ice. That's the only one thing he could be. But then I got to thinking, a snowboarder in Bangkok? I don't know about that. It seems unlikely. So I put in his name again, and the second name that came up was High Seance, I Sin, which is creepy.
That is creepy. High Seance, I Sin.
High Seance, I Sin.
That sounds like a badly translated, like, Japanese horror movie title.
Yeah. So my conclusion is that the snowboard thing doesn't stick. So my conclusion is that Seni is either a closeted snowboarder, unlikely. It's more likely he is actually a dark magic practitioner. Kind of opposite ends of the spectrum here. So I think the dark metal or the dark magic practitioner is a bit more metal. So I'm going to go with that. Seni, thank you for your support, buddy. Don't stick any demons on us. And
yeah, please.
we will do all we can to stay on your good side.
We appreciate support even from black magic practitioners.
That's right. All are equal in our eyes.
Your money is good here. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our patrons who are listening now. As you know, we don't run ads or have sponsors, so we really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We always write back. If you write it, we will answer it.
Yeah, you can also find us online where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. We've had a few people ask us, actually recently, probably 3 or 4 people in the past few weeks ask us where to find the QR code to scan with your Line app. And it's actually, you can probably, I think on our website, bangkokpodcast.com, you can find it on the individual episode pages. There's a button there that said add us online. So you can contact us there, and you can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone. And we're not here next week, but we will see you back here in 2019.
Yeah, Happy New Year's, everybody.